Hello, it's the Dark Author here, and before this video begins, I want to say congratulations to Boring Boy. You are the winner of the shoutout that I did in the Rugrats Theory video. I asked for a recommendation for a creepypasta for me to write or narrate. You picked Super Mario 64, and this is what you get. So everybody go check him out, his channel will be in the description below. But that's enough time, let's get into the video. Warning. Some viewers may find the following content to be disturbing. Viewers' discretion is advised. I've always liked Super Mario 64 when I was a kid. I remembered playing it at my aunt's house all the time. Well, one day, a pop-up appeared out of nowhere as I was watching gameplay footage on YouTube. I was a little bit startled, and was about to close the window, until I realised that it was a website showing a mint condition copy of Super Mario 64 for sale. There was a picture and everything. I usually don't trust these things, but the feeling of nostalgia overpowered me, and I wanted to buy it. The whole business was strange, seeing as how the owner of the game wanted the buyer to send an envelope containing £10 to an address on the site, instead of using something like PayPal. What made things even more strange was that when I tried to gain access to the website, I wrote down the URL. After encountering problems with the game, the page was nowhere to be found. A few days after the £10 were mailed, I got a package containing the new copy of the game. The first thing I noticed when I opened the small box was that the official sticker, with Mario flying in the air, was peeled off or something. In its place was a piece of duct tape with Mario cruelly written on it in permanent marker. I felt a little ripped off, but as long as the game worked, I didn't care. I got out my Nintendo 64 and placed the cartridge inside. The screen turned on with the familiar Mario face that you could stretch and twist aimlessly. I remembered laughing all the time at the results as a kid, and decided to mess around with it for old time's sake. I moved the cursor over to Mario's ear and pulled it to 11 proportions. I was going to do the same to the other ear, when the TV suddenly produced loud static. Mario's whole head began to deform and twist, in ways that I didn't even know were possible for the model. Random sound effects from the game started playing along with the static. As all of this was occurring, I could hear a faint voice whispering in Japanese. The voice was stammering and whimpering. I immediately shut off the game and tried it again. I didn't even bother with Mario's head this time. I just selected a new file and begun to play. When I selected the file, the game skipped the opening monologue by Peach and the entire courtyard section. Mario was just placed right inside the castle. Creepier still, Bowser didn't say anything at all. I tried to ignore it and played the game anyway. However, I also noted that there was no music, just dead silence. There weren't even any toads to talk to. The only door I could enter was Bob on Battlefield. The other doors wouldn't even respond to my button inputs. The portrait to Bob on Battlefield was not the usual picture. It was just a stark white canvas. I was still trying to convince myself that these were just minor glitches, and they wouldn't affect the gameplay at all. Once I entered the portrait, the image suddenly went from a blank canvas to the lethal lava land painting. You know, the slightly unsettling image of the flame with the evil smile? Yeah, that's when it started getting really suspicious. The mission select menu came up, and yet another weird detail was present. Instead of Bob-omb on the summit, the mission was called Turn Back. I have no idea what drove me to press A, but I did. The level started out normal. Everything was how I remembered it to be. I thought I could finally enjoy my favourite childhood game, but then I saw him, Luigi. I was absolutely shocked. He was never in this game. His model wasn't even a Mario palette swap. It looked like a completely original model. Luigi just stood there until I tried to approach him. Then he started running at unexpected speeds. I followed suit and went through the level. Strange things occurred as I pursued him. Each time I picked up a coin, the enemies and music would get slower, and the scenery would look darker in colour and more morbid. It kept gradually getting worse and worse, until I collected a 5th coin. Then the music just stopped. The enemies lay down on the ground like they were dead. I was seriously freaked out, but I kept chasing Luigi. I went up the hill. No cannonballs rolled down trying to knock me over, but I really wasn't surprised at this point. Luigi was always just out of my sight as I pursued him. Once I reached the summit, I saw yet another object out of place. A small cottage was all that was seen on top of the hill. Luigi was nowhere to be found. The cottage was certainly odd looking for a Mario game. It was old, plain, and even broken down. Regardless of my fear at that point, I had Mario enter the cottage. As soon as the door closed, a disturbing picture of a hanging Luigi immediately popped up, along with a very frightening scare chord. It sounded like a violin screech accompanied by loud piano banging. Mario fell to his knees and sobbed for roughly 5 minutes. Then the screen just irised out. I returned to the castle. Mario just slumped out of the painting. The image switched from the Lethal Lava Land portrait to the image of Luigi hanging himself. The room was different as well. It was now a small hallway. Toads with blank expressions and white robes lined the sides of the hallway. There was another painting at the opposite end that was completely terrifying. It was a picture of my family. It wasn't even a photo from the time that Super Mario 64 was made. It was a very recent photo. In fact, I remembered posting it last week. I reached for the on and off switch on the Nintendo 64. There was no way I was playing this anymore. However, when I flipped the switch, the game was still on. I flipped it back and forth, but to no avail. I tried unplugging the entire thing, but it never left the screen. I was even still able to control Mario. I couldn't just leave it on forever, so I kept playing. I went to the photo of my family and jumped in. Only one mission was available, of course. This one was called Run, Don't Walk. I selected the mission. Let's go. The level started in a flooded hallway with platforms floating on the water. Mario landed on one of these, and the camera turned to show what was behind. A silent black void was slowly approaching on Mario. It didn't look like anything. It didn't even look like finished graphics, just a giant blocky black blob. I started jumping from platform to platform with no goal in sight. I kept running, the darkness slowly but surely gaining speed. This kept going on for what felt like hours. I was really doubting there would ever be an end. Mario was just going in circles. Finally, the black blob thing caught up with Mario and enveloped him in darkness. He didn't scream or resist at all. It just consumed him. Mario fell out of the painting and back into the castle. I lost one of my 3 lives. The room was different now. Some of the toads were missing, and the painting looked different. My family and I were in the same positions, but our bodies was partially decomposed. It looked too real to be photoshopped. It looked more like someone just took our dead bodies and posed them. Regardless, I jumped into the painting again. Mario was in a small room. There was still only one mission available. It was called I'm Right Here, spelt just like that. I selected the mission and prepared for the worst. Mario landed in a small dark room. There was no visible way out. The room was empty, except for a piano in the corner. I knew what that meant. I was stuck in there with that mad piano. I approached it and it began chasing me as it always did. There was no way to damage it, so I had to bite the bullet and let Mario take the damage. When he lost all of his health, the usual death animation didn't happen. Mario just got mauled by the piano. He fell as his blood and guts spilled onto the floor, and the camera panned to a top-down view of his corpse. A distorted version of the merry-go-round music from Big Boo's Haunt played, as the screen slowly transitioned from the in-game shot to a photorealistic sketch of Mario's dead body in the same view as the shot. It was unsettling. I was crying softly as I gazed upon the image. I had lost another life. The photo of my family was showing again. We were even more rotten than before. The view zoomed out of the painting. It was like I was warping again. I was greeted with a shot of Peach's castle from the outside. The castle was crumbling into ruin. The fields were on fire. The sky was pitch black. Bowser's laugh played on a loop in the background as children mockingly chanted, "You couldn't save her." This went on for a long time, until a close-up of Peach's face, accompanied by an extremely loud screech, interrupted the loop without notice. Peach's mouth was wide open as if she was screaming, and her eyes were empty black holes. Suddenly, I was back in the hallway as Mario was once again injected out of the painting. Now all of the toads were missing, and me and my family looked positively putrid. Maggots were wriggling around in the holes in our flesh, guts were spilling out of our bodies, my dad's eyeball was hanging loose from its socket. It was too much to bear, but something still urged me to trudge on. I hopped into the painting with only one life remaining. This time, there was no name for the mission, just a blank space where the title would be. I selected the mission and Mario landed on a very small island in the middle of the ocean. There was a solitary sign. It only read, "Dive." I did as it told me to, and I entered the water. The ocean was dark and empty. There were no fish. I wasn't even able to see anything in the water besides Mario. I kept swimming downwards. I kept going for quite some time, yet Mario never ran out of breath. I counted roughly 10 minutes of swimming until I decided to go back up. Just as I turned Mario around, it came. A huge, and I mean huge, eel came out of nowhere and swallowed Mario whole. I was dumbfounded. It went by so fast I wasn't even sure what I saw. The game over screen didn't even show. All that happened was a fade out. The photo of my family and I was shown again. We were just skeletons now. Once again, it looked very real. I couldn't move the camera at all. It just stayed focused on the picture. I shuttered off the game and turned it on again. I chose my file, but it just went to the skeleton photo of my family. I tried this about 3 more times but before giving up. I desperately wanted to stop, but some force kept me from walking away from it. I decided to select the other saved file. The camera once again focused on that skeleton picture, but this time, they were in a different position, as if it was a completely different family. And that, my dorks, was Super Mario 64. Yeah, that's the title. A Super Mario 64 creepypasta. My thoughts on this story? I didn't like it. I didn't like it one bit. The best way to describe this story is repetitive. It repeats itself over and over. And, oh my god, hyper-realistic, photorealistic blood and guts, disgusting stuff happening when it shouldn't have. Seriously, I've seen this all before. It's called Squidward Suicide, it's called Dead Bart, it's called Sonic.exe. I'm sick of seeing it. If there's a positive I can give it, it's probably one of the only Super Mario 64 creepypastas out there. But overall though, this story just could not keep my attention. It was boring, just annoying really. So if I had to give the story a final rating, I have to give it a 3 out of 10. Same rating as Dead Bart, because I like both of them the same, which is nothing. But I will say though Sonic.exe is better, because at least with Sonic.exe it keeps my attention, unlike this story. But anyways, this has been the Dark Author. If you guys enjoyed the story, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can stay up to date with my latest videos. And comment down below what is your opinion of the story and other things. Alright, I am now signing off.